Welcome in. It is a Tuesday. We are live from Social Taco. Another college football season in the books. Indiana. Wait, is that right? Indiana. Your national champions for the 2025 season. Lance Roberts along with Pat Smith, Conrad Van Order, Molly Robinson. Along in just a little bit, we are live from Social Taco. Pat, happy post-college football season, I guess.
Yeah, it's always one of those sad moments when you start thinking about, oh, man, a season has been completed, but you got to take your hats off to Indiana. 16-0, a team that a lot of people, and we'll go over it a little bit later, but I went back and I dug up all the preseason magazines and all the preseason predictions, and there were two major publications that said that Indiana wasn't even a top 25 team. Oops.
Yeah. Oops is right. And you think about the way that we define this team coming in and a lot of their characteristics that they had. They had multiple opportunities last night, whether it was plays being missed because of officiating. If we want to talk about that later on, fine. But opportunities for them not to respond and answer the bell. And they continued to do that, make the little plays. You want to look at just the difference in tackling from Miami to what Indiana was able to do. For me, as a college football fan, it was refreshing. It was a pleasure to watch, and what a game. I'd be interested to see how many eyeballs tuned in last night.
Yeah, because I will tell you this, based on social media and based on some text messages I was getting from some folks, the first half was awful. I mean, there was no enthusiasm whatsoever. But needless to say, the third and fourth quarter lived up to the billing that we hoped that we were going to get for all four quarters. So it will be fascinating to see what the final numbers are, because it was a compelling game in the fourth quarter.
Well, and you felt like with Indiana taking the lead into halftime, getting the ball to start the second half, this was going to be Indiana, right? They were going to be able to put that death nail into Miami. Miami comes out, they get the stop, and then you have Fletcher that breaks off his longest run of the season. All of a sudden, you got a ball game. But what Fernando Mendoza did, and I just that guy, the hits that he took, number one, and Carson Beck got a lot of hits too, but Fernando Mendoza absolutely was ragdolled all night long. That Miami pressure got to him early, got to him often. He didn't have time to throw, but what did he do? He took care of the football, and he found a way to get into the end zone when it counted.
Yeah, so Indiana jumped out to that early 3-0 lead, and you start looking at that first quarter. Miami only had 18 yards of offense in the first quarter. It was a lot of back and forth, a bunch of 3-and-outs for both teams. And then Indiana was able to get that 10-0 lead at the half. Miami only had 69 yards of total offense on 22 plays in the first half. And you think back to what the Indiana-Alabama game, you remember how we were like sitting there watching that game and watching Alabama unable to move the football, and you're going, my goodness, they had 93 yards at halftime. But Miami only had 69 at halftime. The Hurricanes led the nation in sacks going into the game, but they did not touch Mendoza in the first half. Now, in the second half, they finally started getting to Mendoza, but when you're sitting there at halftime, you're starting to wonder if Miami is ever going to score a point. That it was that type of game where it seemed like Indiana was kind of filling things out, and then you just felt like once the third quarter began that Indiana was going to be able to impose their will, kind of like they have against Alabama and like they did against Oregon.
Yeah, and there were mistakes by Miami that facilitated some of the. You think about the third down where they're facing third down and long, and then you get the penalty. And that happened in a couple of different circumstances. But the team that was just a little bit more disciplined ends up winning the football game. But yeah, I thought it was a whale of game. I never thought it was going to be a blowout, but I didn't think that we'd get exactly what we got and how it ended. I'm glad we did.
Yeah, so Mark Fletcher kept Miami in the game, and the defensive front for Miami kept them in. But you got to take your hats off, because when Indiana converted those two fourth-down conversions in the fourth quarter, especially on the quarterback draw when Mendoza took it into the end zone, I mean, that was a ballsy call. And they executed it, and you could tell that Miami was not ready for Mendoza, who had not run a lot in the game or design runs, and that was a big call.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Becker and some of the back shoulder throws and the catches that he was able to make, pretty incredible what he was able to do. That Indiana team, man, Kurt Cignetti, enjoy it. That was a fun team to watch. I don't know if it's going to be as much fun next year if they run it back for a lot of college football. It's a cute story first now. But if Mark Cuban starts dumping $500 million a year into their NIL, then I could see resentment building.
Well, one thing's for sure, the average age of the Indiana Hoosiers is going to be significantly lower than what it was this year. And if anyone believes that in this day of parity in college football that team is going to go 16-0 next year, they are fooling themselves, because it's a lot different when you are hunting someone than being hunted.
Mm-hmm.
And now they will be hunted. And I think it's October 17th that they play Ohio State. And don't think for a second that team will not be ready to take on the defending national champion.
You could just cite one game in Happy Valley. Think about that Penn State team, that Indiana team, and what it took for Indiana to be unblemished, to stay unblemished in that game. A lot of things got to come together for a perfect season.
Absolutely. So Mendoza and company, they get the national championship. That's the last player to win the Heisman Trophy and win a national championship was Devontae Smith back in 2020.
Is this the first Heisman-winning quarterback to win the national championship, then following the game, his brother enters the transfer portal?
Yes, that is the first time that has ever
Just
happened.
making sure that was the first.
Yeah, I was joking around with Conrad this morning. I was like, man, what kind of family loyalty do the Mendozas have? As soon as they get the national championship,
they're taking their gear off in the concourse.
Yeah, I mean,
where are we going, Alberto?
It's like the little brother's taking his jersey off and throwing it across the locker room. Like, I'm out, I'm gone. But
I'd go be Carl. I would go be Fernando's handler.
Well, one thing's for sure, Indiana's got a lot of questions, because I heard last night that Alabama is kind of sniffing around on a couple of Indiana players that might be in the transfer portal. Keep in mind that Indiana and Miami players, they get 5 extra days to go in the transfer portal. So get ready. I'm sure there will be a good bit of folks heading to the portal. Joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline, he joins us each and every Tuesday here on the program. It is our good friend Mike Griffith from the AJCDogNation.com. Mike, your overall impressions on what you saw last night at the national championship game?
Yeah, it was a pretty good game. Kind of played out like we thought. Indiana didn't do anything to beat themselves, and Miami did just enough to beat themselves. They cost themselves 10 points in special teams, and that's kind of why I'm like, I know there's this national media sway about, Indiana is just the greatest team ever, and I said, not really. I mean, they were a pretty solid team that didn't beat themselves, but I'm not going to put them in the category of the Saban teams with the 3 Heisman finalists, or the Georgia team with the 5 first-round draft picks, or the Joe Burrow team, or the USC teams. Look, college football has a lot of parity, and Kurt Cignetti did a great job with this model, which also, by the way, includes the Heisman Trophy-winning quarterback. Let's not forget that. Any other quarterback, I don't know that they win, right? Mendoza really was the real deal and really did play well. But it looked like a semi-pro team to me, and I don't know if it's my brain filter, but it just kind of felt like a varsity versus a JV in terms of the age of those guys, or maybe it's just a compliment to how solid Indiana was. But I don't feel like I sensed, I know it sounds crazy, but greatness, And then I saw someone posted today on, Twitter's on fire, right? X is on fire, and someone said, meanwhile, at a bar in rural Georgia, people say Indiana would have 2 or 3 losses if they played an SEC schedule. And I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe they would. If you got to play on the road, they only beat Iowa, they only beat Iowa by 5 on the road. Do I think playing at Tuscaloosa in September or October before injuries, or playing in Athens, or playing at LSU, playing at this, do I think that's different than playing in the Big Ten? I do. And maybe I really don't feel like I'm too filtered on that. I don't feel like the Big Ten has the depth the SEC does. I just don't.
Mike, how many programs do you see trying to at least take an aspect or do a deep dive on what Kurt Cignetti and that staff have been able to implement in their 2 years there in Bloomington?
Well, if you're talking about trying to sign a future Heisman Trophy winning quarterback out of the portal, I think they all want to do that. Georgia went for Mendoza, right? Indiana beat Georgia. So I think everybody looks for great quarterbacks. I don't know that everybody looks for the numbers that Indiana gets every year, but you got to remember he brought 13 guys from his James Madison program, and that really helped him enable them to build a foundation, right? It'd be like if Kalen DeBoer would have been able to bring 13 guys from Washington instead of just a few and a coach, right? It makes a difference when you're trying to, build a culture. And And when you're doing it in a conference where, let's face it, you really only got to get up for 1 or 2 games a year. You know, I don't think they really play anybody out of conference. You know, they had to get up and beat Iowa on the road, and I'm trying to think who else did they. I guess they went to Oregon. They did win at Oregon this year. That was probably the big game.
Penn State.
But Penn State was last in the Big Ten. They were like 0-6 in the Big Ten when they played them, weren't they? Some 1-5 or something like that.
Yeah,
that was a bad.
They went on their roll.
I mean, UCLA beat. Yeah, you know, Penn State really didn't have much of a pulse. So, but the point is, it's different, and there's more of a margin for error. But again, I mean, you give them look. They won the tournament. It's a tournament game now. We talked about that. You know, the Big Ten people are, you know, all excited and happy until I remind them they haven't won a basketball tournament since 2000. You know, and I think the Big Ten's been better than the SEC 3 out of every 4 years since 2000. I do. I think it's a deeper basketball league. I've covered that league. They care more. The playing environments are tougher. Now, of late, the SEC has beefed it up, but I still think the Big Ten, by and large, is better top to bottom. But they haven't won an NCAA tournament since 2000 because it's a tournament sport. And I say the same about football. We can't ignore the attrition. We can't pretend like these SEC teams aren't beating the hell out of each other and at the end of the year missing key players, because they are, much more so than the Big Ten. And that's just the facts. It's not an excuse. So it'd be nice to see, more of those interconference games at the start of the year. I know Ohio State beat Texas and beat them 14-7, even though Texas outgained them by, I think, more than 100 yards. And how good was Texas this year? I don't know. I know Georgia beat them 35-10. So I think a lot of it's when you play teams, where you play teams. I don't think you can make sweeping generalizations, and yet at the end of the day, there's been 3 consecutive national champions from the Big Ten. I think I saw where Kevin Skarbinski tweeted something like, okay, they just need to win, 5 more to match the SEC, or have 5 more in a row where the Big Ten's had a team in the title to match what the SEC did.
That is Mike Griffith from the AJC, DogNation.com. Joins us every Tuesday here on Three Man Front. So let me ask you about Carson Beck, someone that you know very well. He has only lost 6 games in his college career. In 4 of those 6 games, he had an opportunity with the ball in his hand to take his team down and win the football game, and he throws an interception, including last night's national championship game. Talk about his legacy. What do people in Athens, and what do you think about Carson Beck when it's all said and done, historically, him as a quarterback?
Well, I'd say that if 4 of his 6 losses were one-possession games, he's a pretty damn good quarterback, right?
I
agree. Beat by 10 or 14 or 17 or 21. And how many of those games did he win? I mean, I know I saw him come from 2 scores down against Georgia Tech in the fourth quarter last year. I know he was down 10-0 against Tennessee. I know that he won his first 12 games as a starter and lost to Bama by a field goal with a gimpy Brock Bowers. Got left out of a 14 playoff with a 12-1 team. I thought that was a pretty good season. I know last year he had a receiving corps that led the nation in drop passes. I know that there was a pretty terrible play call to hang him out to dry on a Hail Mary on the last play of the first half and get him hurt. I know that. I also know that he made some bad decisions with what he put on Instagram. And I know that perception overtakes reality sometimes. I know he didn't make any headlines for any public drunkenness. He wasn't arrested going 100 miles an hour. He minded his P's and Q's, but, the perception of Carson was, that he wasn't all in, which, it's unfortunate. We don't monitor these guys and know what they do, and most of them are smart enough not to be telling us what they're doing when they're not working out. But Carson put it on Instagram, and that was a mistake, and so perception overtook reality. I don't think he's a bad guy. I've sat down with him since he's been at Miami. Look, it wasn't so long ago we were singing his praises. I think Greg McElroy had the stat where was Carson Beck the only quarterback ranked in the top 10 of his class that, wasn't starting and hadn't transferred after 3 years? It was, look at Carson Beck doing it right, putting his time in and being loyal to his program and waiting for his turn and applause, applause, applause. Well, then after 5 years and an injury, he says, hey, let me try something new. The fans are frustrated. He's frustrated with the receiving corps. They were awful. They were god awful. They were embarrassing. They were the worst in the country. They led the nation in drop passes. It doesn't get worse than that. And you say, well, maybe it's better for everybody. Gunnar Stockton's ready to roll. Miami's offering me more money. They had the number 1 overall pick playing quarterback at Miami last year. They've got a tremendous offensive line. So why not try something different? In talking with, remember talking last year with the Senior Bowl executive director, Jim Nagy, he said a lot of NFL teams like that. They like to see how guys do when they go and play different. It's not a negative to the NFL. So why not make it easier on everyone? And I thought it was kind of a win-win. I thought, Carson had an opportunity to go somewhere else and kind of start over and right his wrongs. You didn't see him, for the most part. There wasn't any Lamborghinis on social media this year. He was focused. He took over a locker room. He led a new team to a national championship game, played well in other championships in the playoffs for the most part. And Georgia got to see, beloved home state hero Gunnar Stockton lead their team to an SEC championship. Here's another guy that waited 3 years to play. He's ready to go. And Gunnar had a really good year. He'll be the highest of all the quarterbacks returning in the SEC. He's got the highest QB rating, whatever that's worth to you. So I thought it was a win-win. And yet you saw a lot of pettiness on social media last night, and I'm thinking, wow, here's a guy that was at your school for 5 years that graduated from your school, and you're rooting against him. And who are you, fan? This guy gave 5 years of his life and went 24-3 as a starting quarterback at your school. And who are you to root against this guy? So the whole thing strikes me as odd. I know we're in kind of a transitionary state where when players leave, do you root for them? I don't know. You guys tell me. Were people rooting against Jalen Hurts when he left Alabama? I didn't think so. Maybe I'm wrong.
Not to the degree that you're talking about what I saw on social media. I think most people appreciated what Jalen Hurts did in Tuscaloosa, and they saw that as an opportunity for him to grow and potentially better himself in the NFL draft. I mean, you agree with that, Landrum?
Yeah, and fair or unfair, just hear me out. I think that perception to the public that Jalen Hurts was more likable. Just personality.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And when they watch him play, do they consider him a former Alabama player in the NFL?
Absolutely. Yep. They sure do.
So it's
when he plays well, Mike.
Yeah, when he plays well. When he doesn't play well, it's Lincoln Riley's fault.
Oh gosh.
I did want to ask Mike quickly because you used to cover that beat there in Knoxville. What are you hearing from Tennessee folks about their transfer portal quarterback struggles?
They talk a lot about basketball up there these days. But really, baseball maybe, although they lost their baseball coach. No, I mean, it's got to be frustrating for Tennessee because I do think Josh Heupel is a really good coach, and the numbers bear that out when you look against wins over top 25 teams. I think it's like Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer, and I think Heupel might, Marcus Freeman. I think Heupel's in the top 5 or 6 in terms of his winning percentage against top 25 teams, and he's found success against Alabama after a long dry spell and Florida, and yet they can't get over the hump. And everybody's chasing that national championship now, and the pressure is so immense. It is a lot like the NFL, and that may not be a good thing. I mean, what are we up to? 17 of the 32 NFL coaches have been replaced in the last year. That's unbelievable. The Bills fired their head coach. I mean, this guy is one bad call away from playing in the AFC Championship game. You just shake your head. And now in college you kind of understand it because you got these boosters and that have this influence and money. But in the NFL, you're like, really? Like the Buffalo Bills have been right at the doorstep of it. It's shocking, but this is the society we're in, and we know that's not how you run a business. That you've got to have some degree of continuity. Now, same token, you're looking at year 4 of Mike Bobo and Glenn Schumann as the coordinators at Georgia. And if they don't, win a college football playoff game with one of these two guys, does Kirby Smart need to look at making a change? I don't know. I mean, they're right there. They've won the last 2 SEC titles. It kind of seems crazy to say that, but this is kind of where we're at.
That is Mike Griffith. We love having him on every Tuesday. You can follow his work there at the AJC and at DogNation.com. Mike, always a pleasure. Next time we will start talking about some of the spring portal situation in regards to rosters and what it's going to look like around the SEC. And also, I guess you'll be heading over to the Senior Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, yep. I'll be down there. I'll actually be staying at the beach house while I'm down there. But guys, there's a top 25 team. You know that Georgia now has been ranked in the top 25 for 6 straight weeks. That's the longest that Georgia's been ranked in the top 25 in basketball since a guy by the name of Jim Herrick was the head coach.
Good old Jim Herrick.
Wow.
How about that?
Jim
Last
Herrick.
Did he go to Rhode Island after Georgia, or was that before?
Yeah.
Or was that Jim Herrick Jr.?
You know what? I'm not real sure. I was flashing back to the Mark Madness days with Mark Gottfried at Alabama.
You know, I thought you were going to say Hugh Durham.
I grew up on Hugh Durham.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were going to say. I didn't know you were going to say
Georgia doesn't have much basketball. I mean, they really don't have any basketball tradition. It's really bad.
Does Kirby still go to the games? Kirby used to sit sit on the front row courtside.
Who was the guy Claxton that played for them? The
Lakers
big guy.
game.
Claxton, you remember?
Yeah, no, when Kirby's there, it's worth 6 points. But no, but if Mike, look, this team made the NCAA tournament for the first time in 10 years. So they're trying to do it 2 years, and the Florida people are all over Mike White and calling him all these names and stuff because he left Florida when it's just some of this SEC stuff. It's just it's crazy. But Georgia's starting to care about basketball again. That's I
good.
don't know about again, but it's been a minute. It's not like Alabama and Auburn. I mean, boy, what a treat you had with Bruce. And it's really been fascinating to watch Steven and this Auburn team. You just kind of feel like there's a ceiling there, but they've had some tough games. And, boy, I'm tuned in because, boy, Pettifer's such a fantastic player. And seeing what's going on with Oates and Alabama, they got some tough losses, but they're still a really good team. And
I love basketball, Mike. I love basketball, Mike Landrum.
Yeah, basketball, Mike. Seems like he's a lot more positive.
Yes, he's not so negative.
He's not going to talk about.
He's not going to talk about
basketball league.
Carson Beck, was recruited by Nick Saban, and then spurned Nick Saban. And
Can we watch March Madness from your place down on the coast?
Hey, let me tell you something.
That's where I saw the Leitner shot. I told you that. I was in Panama
City. He's got
a
really nice big TV in the main den. That opens up to the kitchen.
Free Wi-Fi and cable, guys.
Yeah. It's got Roku.
Just make sure your staff's there that weekend.
Yeah.
Pretty high maintenance.
Hey, Mike, have a great weekend and stay safe during this ice storm of the century coming up this weekend.
Brace yourself.
Yeah. I look forward to it, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Thanks, Mike.
We appreciate you.
Always one of our favorites. I've been getting texts nonstop about Mike's positivity about the college football season. We got so much to get into. We started off with Mike. Joining us just a couple minutes, Kyle Parmley, who you hear every Friday on this radio show during the high school football season, as there's a big decision coming up for reclassification, and there's a lot of stuff going on politically down in Montgomery. Where we stand currently, are we going to get an answer this Friday?
Well, bottom line, selfishly, Pat and I would like to know where we're going to be next year.
I want to know where I'm calling games on Friday night. I want to know if I'm, hitting the road and going.
Am I driving the truck or am I taking the fuel economic car?
Am I going to be forced to go back to North Alabama to Huntsville, or am I going to go to places like Prattville and Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa?
Is one of the teams in our region in another state?
Yeah, we'll see. Kyle Parmley from Starnes Media joins us next on Three Man Front. It is 10:27. Welcome back into Three-Man Front. We will continue the conversation with the College Football National Championship last night as Indiana claims its first ever national title in football. We're also going to have J.P. Shadrick, one of the senior reporters for the Jacksonville Jags. He's a former Hewitt-Trussville football player, went to the University of Alabama. Now he works for the Jags. He is in town. He's going to stop by. We'll talk a little about the NFL playoffs, and, of course, later on, Dimitri Ravanos. But joining us on site, if you're watching us on YouTube, that's our main guy, Kyle Parmley from Starnes Media, who joins us. You hear him every Friday. Nobody knows the high school athletics better than Kyle, and Kyle, just we got a couple minutes, and you're going to have an extended stay with us here for a few minutes, kind of detailing what's going on. But for those that have not heard, there's a lot of politics, I know it's shocking, that is going on in the high school athletic world right now with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, private schools. Reclassification was supposed to be announced the first part of December. Now it's been pushed back. We're told maybe this Friday. Kind of a Cliff Note version where we currently stand with all of this going on in the high school ranks.
Sure. Well, you mentioned, every 2 years we normally get the reclassification announcement in the middle of December.
That's based on enrollment numbers from freshman through junior year.
Right, and that usually tells everybody the regions you're playing in for the next 2 years. Football coaches are able to go schedule. But we got word about a month ago that the Athletic Association they weren't on time with this all this scenario, and they hadn't had their meetings, and they needed to figure some things out, so they postponed the reclassification stuff until what is supposed to be this Friday. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you mentioned politics. The Alabama state legislature is firmly stuck their foot in the door of Alabama high school athletics. So there's a lot to be played out. There was a Senate bill that was introduced last week that if something like that were to pass, then the government is going to be quite heavily involved in the procedures going forward. So there's a lot going on right now, and I have no idea how it's going to end up being resolved.
Kyle, pretend that our listeners, our audience, have no idea with stuff that's being introduced at the legislative level. Get us up to speed on that.
Well, sure. There's been you always have kind of heard stuff about some politicians not really liking the way the Alabama High School Athletic Association has done business over the years. But at the end of the day, the AHSAA is a private organization, and they've been able to have their rules and enforce them without much political interference. But the Choose Act that has become a real sticking point because that allows people to change schools and get some of that government funding and able to do that if students or families feel that moving to a different school is better for their situation. However, that flies in the face of traditional AHSAA eligibility rules, which state if you transfer schools without being in zone, then you're not eligible for a year. And the Alabama state government has not really enjoyed hearing that, hey, if you take Choose Act funds to transfer to a better school for your situation, then you're not eligible to play sports. They haven't liked that very much, and they have gotten heavily involved in what the Athletic Association is doing, and it's getting a little messy.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation with Kyle Parmley from Starnes Media. We're live at Social Taco. Doors open up at 11. Come on up and see us. We're on the Taco Terrace on the second floor. More with Kyle. This is Three-Man Front on Jocks.
Three-man front. We continue live here from Social Taco in Homewood. The door's going to open 26 minutes from right now, 11 to 2. We broadcast a Taco Tuesday. Don't forget about the Mexican pizzas, chicken feathers to start. How about some guac? Add bacon. It's great. SocialTaco.bar. I want to tell you about a great local company, and it's a family-owned company and two brothers that I've known for a long time. In fact, Sammy and Matt Noto of Noto Roofing. But Matt Noto, he played at Spain Park back when I called his games, back when I was actually young. Yeah. Worked alongside those guys. It's a company that you can trust. And when it comes to your roof, it comes to protecting your investment, you want guys that are going to do it right and guys that are going to be there after the completion of the roof, or maybe just a couple of years down the road where something comes up. You can trust him. Warranties available. It's Noto Roofing, locally owned and operated. Got professionals like Chris who's coming out to your home, very honest and open about what he finds. He's going to let you know if your roof is not functioning properly, the last thing he's going to do is put shingles on it. They want to make sure everything is right. They do it right. Free inspections, all Jocks listeners. They offer financing to help with the payments. NotoRoofing.com, N-O-T-O roofing.com, 205-848-2299.
Kyle Parmley from Starnes Media joins us for a few more minutes here on Three-Man Front as he's kind of given us a Cliff Note version of what is currently happening with the Alabama High School Athletic Association. There is a big meeting coming up on Friday. We've been talking about the politics involved. So let me ask you about the kerfuffle that has been the whole private school situation, because I was at an event about a week ago and somebody was bending my ear telling me about the whole private school situation, that obviously Asha might be ready to pull the trigger and kick those private schools out. And we're talking about the Briarwoods, the John Carrolls, all the Catholic schools down in Mobile. What can you tell us from the private school standpoint about all this?
Yeah, it honestly seems a little bit odd to me that this is the period of time that all of this is coming to a head. I mean, for years we've seen the Athletic Association battle with how to balance out public schools and private schools, because obviously they have different admission standards. Private schools don't have to worry about school zones. It's much more. They're much more lenient on how they can, bring people into their schools. And so that's always been a sticking point, especially from the public school angle of like, hey, they have advantages that we don't have.
They can go recruit someone, and as long as they pay their money, or you can give them a scholarship, so to speak. I know Montgomery Bell up in Nashville. We played them back-to-back years, and their whole roster was filled with players from around the – matter of fact, Ty Chandler was from the state of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. He was their star running back who ended up going to Tennessee, and now he's in the NFL.
Yeah, and so when you have things like that – and so over the years, the AHSAA has put in an enrollment multiplier where private school students count as 1.35 students to attempt to balance this out. Well, a handful of years ago, the association took another step to kind of push down the private schools a little bit when it comes to competitive balance, where if a school like a Briarwood, for example, is doing really well at a certain sport in 5A, well, then they kind of get bumped up to 6A, then potentially to 7A. You see that a lot in some of the smaller sports, like the volleyballs, for instance, that private schools have just dominated for years. A lot of those schools that won a lot of those smaller classifications are now up into the higher classifications. And to be honest, it seems like that part, that rule has kind of worked the way it's intended. But if we're being honest, like my opinion, I don't really understand why now is the big potential split upcoming, because if we're being honest, like it kind of seems like all the quote-unquote recruiting talk that we've been having over, the last several years in high school sports has been a lot of the public schools.
The private schools, it's been the public schools.
It's not the private schools that are at the center of this conversation. It's a lot of the bigger football teams that, their names are linked to all of this stuff year over year. And so it really doesn't – to me it doesn't quite make sense as to why now the crusade against private school athletics has really reached this point.
Is the sentiment amongst coaches that you've talked to that coach at public schools that they want the private schools to move into their own deal?
The ones that I talk to really don't feel that way anymore.
They feel the same way you do.
I think there was a period of time, a handful of years ago, private schools are winning all of these volleyball state championships. They're winning all of the country club sports. Like, they're winning all of those, but competitive balance has kind of given the public schools a more of a chance in these sports. So it's really confusing, to be honest. And like when we start talking about a potential split, the did the AHSA try to really suppress the private schools, put them in their own division, give them their own playoff system, all of this stuff? If you do that, you're going to reach a point where the private schools just say, to heck with this, we're not going to be a part of this any longer, and they're going to go do their own thing, which really it doesn't stack up well. You think of the private schools in Birmingham. You mentioned Briarwood, John Carroll, Westminster Oak Mountain, Indian Springs. Like, outside of that, you got to go a long way to find other private schools you can compete against in a lot of sports.
All right, so let's play this out. Let's say that happens and the private schools are no longer part of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. That takes place. What happens in regards to 7A, 6A? Because I saw one plan a couple weeks ago somebody sent me. Again, this was not someone official. This was just scuttlebutt, that the potential that 7A would go away because the 32 largest schools that play in the 7A classification, they would be eliminated. They would have to go back down and play in the 6A. Have you heard that? Is there any truth to that potential rumor?
Yeah, you mentioned both of these plans. If I think the AHSA has really enjoyed what has come of, they introduced 7A in 2014. And what that created was an additional classification, an additional championship game, an additional revenue stream for all of these, the 32 biggest high school athletic programs in the state. And I think the state has really liked that because not only do you add a championship in every sport, you're also giving a lot of these middle to upper tier 6A schools that had kind of gotten squeezed out. I mean, I think of Homewood High School as a great example of
Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, they in a lot of sports had kind of gotten pushed to the bottom of some of their areas in Class 6A. Well, when you get those really huge 7A schools kind of out of the way, they've been a lot more competitive in a lot of sports, and it's really been beneficial. So do I think, even if, like you said, if the private schools are removed, I don't think they do away with 7A. I think you could potentially see a scenario where you still have your 32 7A schools, and then maybe 6A is put at 32 or 40.
So 6A would be a smaller group of teams.
If you just by sheer math, the 50 some odd private schools, if they're removed from the association, I think you could still see a smaller 6A that kind of mirrors 7A in a lot of ways, of just kind of being a lot of those bigger schools and programs that are still competing at a high level.
When is the expectation on any kind of resolution? We got to get something done. Right?
The meeting is Friday morning in Montgomery. So we have been told that we will get an announcement on Friday when it comes to reclassification, and naturally it has to include the resolution or the proposed resolution for how the private schools fit into that. Now, the private schools have a choice here. If the AHSAA presents a reclassification or a new championship program on Friday that the private schools say that, hey, we don't like this, then they can push back, and we might have all sorts of conversations on, well, do the private schools stay? Do they try to put pressure on the association to bend to what they initially proposed? Do the private schools just say, hey, we're gonna go take our chances in the AISA? I don't know. There's a lot to still be decided. I think the hope is that the association presents their plan Friday, reclassification happens, fall sports for the next year are able to finally be scheduled, but I don't know that it's going to be that simple.
Will our respective regions be affected, in your opinion?
I think they will have to be. I mean, there's so much still up in the air. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why this got delayed a month.
And what we've been talking with you is like a large-scale change. Let's say that large-scale change doesn't happen. We still have the general reclassification issues where, say, a Spain Park that used to be 7A, they went down to 6A. Their numbers might now represent them.
They get your numbers and you're 15 over the limit, and then by the time the school season or the season starts, you're 50 under the number.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we know this by being through it, several times now. 7A, with it being only 32 schools, it only takes one change.
Yes.
Depending on where a school is, these two schools are across the state. Hewitt-Trussville's had to be stuck in the Huntsville region before. And
that was my favorite time.
I bet. That was a ton of fun for you guys.
It's not fun for anybody, especially people who work with Pat. You have to listen to the all week, I've got to drive to Huntsville.
Yeah, the driving up I-65 on a Friday afternoon. Boy, that was great.
Yeah, there's just so much. There's so much to be figured out, and I just don't see a scenario where we get told a plan on Friday that everybody's happy with. There's no way that happens.
No shot clock for high school basketball?
It's coming soon.
Okay.
It might be a thing in some of the upper classifications by next year.
Good.
Do you need to run, or are you good for another?
I'm good.
All right. We're going to finish up with Kyle Parmley right after this. We're live at Social Taco on Jocks. It is 10:47 here on Jocks. We've already talked to Mike Griffith from the AJCDogNation.com. If you missed that interview, you can always download the Three Man Front podcast. Kyle Parmley from Stearns Media knows high school athletics in this state better than anybody. He joins us every Friday during the high school football season. He carries us throughout the entire season, reporting on all these great high schools around the state. And there's a big, for those that are just now tuned in, Kyle, if you'll just kind of give everybody a Cliff Note version quickly of what is on the docket for Friday down in Montgomery at the Alabama High School Athletics Association meeting.
Right. So Friday in Montgomery, the AHSAA is supposedly having their reclassification meeting, which happens every 2 years. It sets the regions and all that for all the sports moving forward for the next 2 years. That normally happens in the middle of December.
Yep.
But the Alabama politicians have gotten involved. The Choose Act has caused a lot of issues, and now they've put forth some bills up to the Senate, and the Athletic Association has a lot more on their plate than they're used to.
All right, so back to the political spectrum of this, because there are a lot of political things going on in Montgomery right now in regards to this. The governor is even involved. Is there a situation where you could come to some type of resolution on Friday, and then the politicians step in, and whatever conclusion they come to on Friday could be, I guess, disallowed, or the government gets involved and they throw it out?
It's hard to say if that would happen on Friday, because I think the biggest sticking point right now is the AHSAA's unwillingness to bend on their eligibility rules,
okay,
which is the biggest issue as far as the state government is concerned right now. Is eligibility issues for students that transfer schools for reasons that are not just family move type of things. So whether that'll happen on Friday, I don't think you can really plan for that. But at the same time, it's something that the association they've got to deal with quickly, because there's so much uncertainty. You mentioned the Senate bill that got put forth last week. Like that's something that demands that at least half of the central board be politicians, and it's like at least 15 board members or 50% be from the state government, which that sounds. I mean, that would change a whole lot, and probably not for the better. So I don't know. There's a lot to decide, and I don't know that Friday's meeting will delve too much into that, or if we'll have any sort of resolution.
Where is I guess the issue of NIL, because other states have done it with their high school programs, heard a little bit of buzz about it here, and then it kind of died, and I've seen nationally it's kind of died. Where is it here? Yeah, I mean, you kind of figured the way that the state of Alabama has approached topics like that and over the years, that they would be one of the last ones to react. And, I mean, you've seen that. I mean, Alabama's lost some of their most high-profile athletes over the last handful of years to neighboring states like Georgia and Florida. Like that kind of stuff has happened, and it will continue to happen as long as money like that is being allowed to exchange hands. But honestly, ever since this became such a big political deal, like that type of topic has completely fallen on the back burner. I'm not going to say a specific player, but let's just say you're a standout, amazing basketball player, and another school from another state says, hey, we want you to come over here, let's just say the state of Georgia. What does that NIL deal look like, maybe? Just range.
I have no idea. They try to be so coy with these types of numbers and deals, and they try to hide it in endorsement deals, and just I don't know. Nobody. It's one of those things that it's like.
So it's just like college football. Nobody knows.
If you would see it be transparent, I mean, that would be a lot easier to deal with. But I mean, who knows?
You talk to more coaches than anybody I know, and when I say coaches, not just football coaches, but basketball coaches. You're big in the softball realm and the volleyball realm. The people that you talk to, with all this that's going on with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, is there a common denominator with these coaches which they would like to see happen, or they like the status quo? What are they telling you?
Well, the main thing is, number one, you've got to have answers, especially for fall sports that are upcoming. Like, football coaches have to have the ability.
They can't schedule right now.
They cannot schedule anybody, and what you end up having is a lot of the bigger schools over the last several years, the really good 6A schools and most of the 7A schools, have already had a hard enough time finding non-region opponents, because there's not that many, that are going to give you a competitive game, and the smaller schools don't want to take an automatic loss,
right,
and get beat up in the process. So they've got to have that. They've got to get some resolution on regions and areas and all that so that they can start planning for the fall to not have just a garbage schedule. But to your point, I mean, at the end of the day, they want common sense to prevail. Like, there's just so many things that it seems that, as a state or as an association, it just seems, we miss the point far too often when there are just solutions right in front of us. And, there's times where we dig our heels in on topics that it's like, is that really what the hill we're gonna die on?
Well, you know what? The problem is that they're seeing just what an incredible, well-run college football playoff is every single year, and that's what they're taking their cues from.
It's unbelievable the stuff that we have to hear on a daily basis. I mean, but a lot of it is just so, like, you hear so many rumors that you don't even know what's true because, in Montgomery, like, they're not communicating with us. They're not telling us, hey, this is what we're working through.
Hey, by the way, they're not communicating with the coaches either, the ones that I talk to.
It's just like, so you really don't have much idea what's going on. I mean, you get a news story every now and then that's kind of like, hey, we talked to a source and here's what they're talking about. And then, we all get these like, ooh, somebody leaked a proposed region alignment or whatever. But you really that's all we've got to go on. And, like, this is coming up supposedly Friday. And, I'm going to be down in Montgomery to try to cover, whatever happens and comes out of the reclassification meeting to see if there's anything there. But there's just no communication. And we're grasping at straws trying to figure out what's going on.
We're trying to figure out Alabama's running game for next year. Crowell, how good is he?
I've watched him a few times, and he's like –
tell everybody.
He is a monster. Clearly, by far the best player on the field at any given moment. And he's definitely not been, like, propped up by having, it's not because he has elite talent around him or coaching or any of that. Like, he's had a great team to play on. But when that dude carries the football, guys are falling out of the way because they don't want to try to tackle him.
And I know we're setting you up for this is kind of a loaded question. You don't know this, but you've obviously watched him. So as Landrum, do you see him being able to contribute based on what Alabama did?
He could have done it back in December.
He's one of the few guys.
He could have gone to Norman, Oklahoma, and played in that game and contributed.
People always talk about how Trent Richardson and Derrick Henry looked in high school. Like, Crowell is like that. Like, you see him on the high school football field and think, like, he could contribute at a big-time college program today. And if he doesn't contribute immediately, I would be surprised.
That is Kyle Parmley. You can follow his work on a plethora of, obviously, social media and at Starnes Media. All the different we didn't talk about the Braves.
Brave season's coming soon.
I know.
Already down a shortstop.
All right, I'll bug you Friday. Find out what's going on down there.
Perfect. I'll be there.
All right, that's Kyle Parmley, Starnes Media. More three-man front live right here at Social Taco.